So the proposed solution for this requirement, actually a number of requirements, is a component which on a configuration file you can see on my screen now. Basically, there are two things here that I am extending overriding. The first thing here you can see within the master database definition, I'm simply substituting the default getItem command implementation for the data engine component with my custom one. And here the logic of this, I'm not gonna go into detail. I'm gonna record separate screencast more around like technical under the hood aspects of this implementation, but this is really high level. This component makes sure that there is no zero version coming out of Sitecore database for a specific item in a specific language. So this is what we're seeing for both Danish and Japanese site, and this is exactly what we don't want to have on our Japanese website. We want to make sure that absolutely no zero version items are coming back from Sitecore. So this component actually checks for performs appropriate checks, and also and returns null, not an empty item, in case if there are zero versions for that item. And the way I check, I have a number of processes that check whether to perform this custom operation, and one of them is a setting called enforce version presence templates. So in other words, this is just a pipe separate list of GUID template GUIDs which will be processed by this custom logic. So I'm not gonna, obviously it doesn't make sense for me to process all system templates, things like that. So this is a way for me to limit the scope of my customization. And the second component here that I'm using is an extension of standard values provider. And this component actually tackles both requirements. First one of a field-based fallback to English language. So if I don't have content in Danish language on a specific field, then I've fallen back to the same field of the same item from English US version. And also that second requirement that corporate marketing wants to have is this enforcing approach. So I want to have a few fields such as banner images, logo to be simply enforced across multiple other versions other than US English. So what happens here, I'm overriding standard values provider here, and this one is called fallback language provider, that accepts a few properties here such as supported databases. I'm not gonna do it on core, and since I'm running live mode here, it makes sense to do it on master only, just to limit the scope of my customization again. And debug enabled, this is just a flag for me to output more information to the logs just for troubleshooting purpose. And there are a few components below that worth mentioning. Here in the site section, I'm pretty much adding another attributes to my shell site. This is a custom one called enable fallback, and this is a way for me then to check within my custom logic whether to perform fallback or not. And the reason why I'm actually enabling it on the shell site is that I want my business users in content editor actually to see those fallback values showing up as real values in the fields, and that starts making kind of more sense to the users. This setting we already covered, and the last thing here is a custom command. It's called setup fallback command. So this is a few buttons that I created that will help setting up the templates, because the whole fallback approach works on field level. So every field you can control whether to enable field fallback or not on the actual field definition. I'm going to show you that in a second. And this command actually provides a few buttons on the UI, on the ribbon, just to help you setting up a few templates. If you already have existing system, it helps bring in your templates up to speed with your fallback rules. And let me show you what I'm talking about exactly. I'm going to open up this template manager application where all my templates are, and here I'm going to select a template, the site root template, and go to the configure tab. This is exactly what that command brings: 4 buttons that control the fallback language fallback and language enforcing behavior. So I can simply select a template and click enable fallback. This command will process every field below this template in every section and enable fallback for every field. An enforcing option will do exactly the same, but it will toggle enforcing checkbox. So if I'm gonna show you, for example, our site section where my logo is stored, so here's my logo field itself, my data section, which I'm gonna collapse, and here is the fallback section that I'm adding with my component, with my customization here, that brings two checkboxes. This first one is doing exactly what the title says. It tells the standard values provider, my extended version of that provider, to inherit that value from source language version to any target language that I'm specifying. And this is exactly, we did that to implement and to satisfy our corporate marketing needs, to make sure that logos are consistent across the website, web properties, themes, images, things like that. The second checkbox here is called enable fallback if configured, and this configuration is either based on the web config or that configuration include file that I just showed. If we take a look into our multi-site configuration here in web config, you can see that we have 3 sites defined here as separate entities. Each site maps to a unique host name, and this is that promised multi-site part of this presentation. And also besides that, we obviously have language, so each site maps to a specific language, start item, everything standard, but also there are some extensions here. This enabled fallback value, this new attribute that I added, basically this is what enables that fallback checks for this context website. Enforced version presence, as I mentioned, this is for that extended get item command that makes sure that no empty items are coming back from Sitecore database. So this is exactly how it's configured. The Danish version has a fallback, and Japanese version enforces the version presence setting.